you got to realize that whatever you're doing, you're competing with somebody. What is it that gives you an advantage over your competition? Whatever you're good at, try to be great at it. And if you're great at it, good things will happen.
Maverick Podcast.
I'm far from average. That's why I had to come sit down and chop it up with DJ Maverick. They know my name from coast to coast and even in Dallas. I use my talent when I'm faced with a challenge. Gratitude strength is my magnet. Close your eyes and imagine. If you can see it in your mind, then you can have it.
Maverick Podcast.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. This is the Maverick Podcast. I'm your host, DJ Maverick. Today we have another rock star in the building. We have pianist, musical director, band leader, and also live show producer, the one and only Kendrick McKinney. Welcome to the podcast.
Man, thanks so much for having me out, dude.
I've been looking forward to it. Before we dive into everything, for the 1% of the people out there that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, man. So I've got a wife, 3 kids. We just had our third child.
Congrats.
Man, thank you. He's 3 months old now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I play music for a living. I'm very immersed in everything that I do is revolved around music and art every single way. Pianist, like you said, keyboardist. I do a lot of jazz, primarily jazz pianist, but I play keyboards and, kind of all different genres.
Yeah, that's incredible. When I was seeing everything that you were doing, I was like, dude, when does this guy sleep? Because it seems like you've got shows like during the week. We were talking about you do like a weekly like jazz thing, right?
Yeah, every Wednesday I have a show that's at the 51st Street Speakeasy.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a 4-hour, we do a featured artist at the beginning of it, and then we have an open jazz jam session community from about 9:30 to midnight.
Wow. So how did you land on music? Was it always like music was your passion, or was it like people that were involved in your life that had like a musical background, or how did it work out that way?
Yeah, so for me, my parents were both musicians and heavily involved in music.
Okay.
And so they were band directors for years. Let's see, I guess for 10 years they were both band directors before they kind of switched, careers.
Yeah.
But they were kind of raised in music, and that's definitely how it came about. I started playing piano and taking piano lessons when I was 5 years old, and kind of went from there.
Yeah, that's kind of unique because usually it's like the parents aren't really into music and the kids are doing music to like be a rebel or like do something, right? Like the dad will be a lawyer or a doctor or something, and the guy's like, I want to be in a rock band or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of unique that you grew up that way. What was it like? Was it pressure to be like, hey, I got to focus on the genres of music that my parents like, or like what were the influences?
Well, no, not necessarily. They were pretty intentional about the way that they, infused their music education on us. It was all classical music at first, but then as soon as I started to get very interested in all the other stuff that my dad and parents were showing me, kind of went down all kinds of different trails. I actually stopped playing piano for just a couple years, and I thought I was going to be a guitar player.
Okay.
And went all in on that and bought all kinds of gear and, kind of went a other direction after that. But, that was, I'd say the biggest thing is they gave me, freedom to basically say, hey, we're going to go all in if you're going to go all in, if this is what you want to do.
What other influences were they playing around you? Like what genres? Was it like Beatles? Like what kind of stuff?
From a very young age, I've been obsessed with Prince and Miles Davis, and grew up heavily in the funk and bebop and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I was telling you when I saw it, because we just did a project together, right?
Right.
I was super excited about that project. Shout out Jay and the Bishops. But I was telling you, when I see a person pull up with the Nord, it means they're about to get funky, right?
Yeah.
To me, that person cares about like the way the organs sound. They care about like, I don't know, you probably know the technical terms, but like the breathing and like the echoing and the way that it holds the notes and stuff. Like, it seems like that has like all the different levers to make it like sound like an actual organ.
Yeah, it's got actual like, not physical drawbars, but digital drawbars that kind of that emulate, the organ and exactly how the organ looks and sounds.
Yeah. So anytime I see somebody pull up with that red, because it's always red, right?
Always that Nord red.
Yeah. They pull up with that red, and I'm like, okay, they're either serious on the keys, like traditional piano, like they could play like a grand like piano,
right?
Or they're about to get funky with like some organs, like some traditional like old school funk type of sounds, right?
Yeah, it's hard for me, as a pianist, that's a lot of what I do is playing actual piano, and so that's meant to replicate an 88 key
Yeah.
Yamaha real piano, like a C7 is the sound that I typically go toward.
Okay.
And so
cool.
it's hard for me to stray from the Nord if I have to play a backline keyboard, or if if I'm somewhere else, I'm not going to be liking the sound as much as the Nord for sure.
But is there like limitations? Because then you got the guys that are like Yamaha guys or whatever, right? It seems like those are more like, I don't know, more samples or something. Because it seems like the Nord has more traditional type sounds, right?
Yeah, so the Yamaha guys, that's what's kind of on a lot of those older school records. Is those Rhodes sounds, or those specific synth sounds, especially like the gospel and neo soul stuff.
Okay.
So there's several of those sounds that Nord you can potentially make, but they just don't have,
Yeah.
You kind of have to, that's the good thing about the Nord too, is you can take any piano they have and craft your own sound based on that piano.
Okay.
So you can kind of go crazy with it. But there's a lot of classic Yamaha sounds that are just known as, like specifically the motif sounds in gospel and R&B from the 90s and early 2000s.
I know you're playing jazz, but like, personally, what do you enjoy playing?
All kinds of different stuff. I didn't play very much country music ever. I didn't listen to it, really grow up listening to too much of it besides, Hank Williams Jr.
Even though you're from UConn, right? Shout out UConn High School.
That's right. Even though I'm from UConn.
Yeah.
But, starting early 2020 to 23, I guess, made good friends with a guy named Kyle Earhart. And he's as good as they come. He's awesome, dude. And he hired me and his band to play at Oklahoma Ranch. And from there, it kind of spawned my love for 90s country. And so he kind of had a band, and we said, hey, let's do this 90s country project. And so we have a 90s country live band that kind of I book for. He's the band leader, and it's an awesome project.
So you're doing like George Strait, like Garth Brooks,
all of it,
all that stuff.
Yeah, that's what's cool is one night it could be, a Miles Davis tribute, or we did Tony Williams tribute last night.
Okay.
And, the next night could be 90s country.
Yeah.
So it never gets old.
That's
never
awesome.
Boring.
You were telling me that UConn High School has like some roots when it comes to jazz too, right? Like I didn't know about that part, right?
Yes, absolutely. There's several people that are in New York City that are, the best at what they do that went to UConn High School.
That's incredible.
David Gibson is a trombonist, and actually headlined my first jazz festival this last year in North Carolina. I got to hire him and fly him down from New York to meet us all there. So that was cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, he's awesome. But there's a long history of jazz musicians that are from UConn High School.
Yeah. You never hear about it. Like when everybody's like UConn, they always think Garth Brooks, right? Shout out Garth Brooks for sure, but like you never would have known like the jazz stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. Even my parents both went through the UConn High School jazz program.
Okay.
One of my teachers and my close friend, his dad is Brian Gorel. He's the head of jazz at UCO.
Okay.
He went through the UConn High School program. Sherelle Cassidy, David Bowen, who is my drummer, he plays every Wednesday at the Speakeasy, what we were talking about. Went through UConn High School. There's a whole lot of people.
For the viewers out there, like you make the distinction, right, of like pianists versus keyboardists, right? So for the viewers out there, like, how would you explain the difference there? What type of player?
Yeah. So a pianist is, I think one of the big differential parts between that is a keyboardist is really going to know how to craft different sounds.
Okay.
And play different synths. They'll kind of know more about the technical parts of things. This is just general, not always, but a keyboardist is usually going to play more pop type music.
Yeah.
They're kind of going to be more focused on the sounds than they are necessarily the playing part.
I guess if someone is playing keyboard, they could even play like electrical guitar,
right,
or something,
or marimba, or anything,
accordion or something, right? It seems like you're a different person depending on like what venue and like what place you're playing at. Like sometimes you're like funky, like keyboardist, but then sometimes it's like more traditional piano type stuff and even the jazz stuff, right? Like, how are you able to do that? How are you able to like kind of like weave into the different avenues like that?
I think a lot of it is just the way that I grew up listening to music is kind of listening to everything. Really, one of the only styles that I didn't know until a couple years ago, really had never really listened to, was country.
Yeah.
And I've kind of done my work and research, and I've played, probably in the last 3 years, 2-3 years, maybe 100 country gigs. So getting better at that, definitely not perfect, but
And even some Spanish stuff. You were telling me that you had to learn some Spanish, and
yes,
you're playing Gasolina all of a sudden.
I was, yes, with Lee, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's it just kind of depends on what I'm playing and kind of how I'm, how I fit into each different situation. But, I think growing up listening to all different styles of music and being exposed to all of that, it's very natural to be playing a Whitney Houston ballad on a duo setting.
Yeah.
And then, be playing some really intense jazz the next night. And, I love it that way. If I just played jazz, I would probably not be a very likable person, but, it just works out the way it is.
Yeah. And I bet like it scratches a different itch, right? So
Yes.
playing the different genres, it probably allows you to be creative in a different way, right? So would you say that kind of like helps you avoid burnout with music, like getting able to do all these different type of gigs, or what?
Absolutely. Yeah. Not only the different genres, but the different people. I'm with a different group of people almost every single night. So yeah, I get tired. I get tired of working, but never of the work,
Let's talk about that grind, because like we were talking before we started recording about making a living doing the thing that you love, right? Like you always hear about the stereotypical starving artist, right? And you know better than anybody how hard it is to like keep working. I see that you're busy, like even like a random like Tuesday, Wednesday, or whatever, like you're out working, right? So tell me about that. How did you take that jump, and what does it take to be able to do that?
Yeah. So I never really knew anything else. And I was very lucky to
Really?
be plugged in from a very young age. From the relationships I had with friends at school and friends at other schools, and then really the relationships that my parents had within the music community.
So you never had like a traditional like 9 to 5 ever?
Nope.
Wow.
I worked for my family's business.
Okay.
And I worked a lot for my family's business, and that was a lot of fun. That was asphalt repair.
Okay.
So, but
That
that
doesn't
was,
sound like fun.
see, but it was fun. The situation that it was,
Yeah.
my uncle made it really fun.
Okay.
But yeah, other than that, never really had a real job. I was there for 5.5 weeks. I taught lessons at a guitar center,
Oh, okay.
and then I just never came back
Didn't
one
like-
day. I just never came back.
Why not? You just didn't enjoy like teaching, or is it frustrating, or
It
what?
was, there, they just wouldn't let you, they wanted you to teach their curriculum.
Okay.
They didn't want you to communicate with any of your students outside of that lesson. So if I needed to email my student a PDF of this, that wasn't allowed, or anything. They had to already be printed. It didn't make any sense. I was also 21
Okay.
and
Yeah.
stupid, but yeah.
Being a musician, I don't know, you tell me, but it almost feels like you wouldn't know when your next paycheck is going to come from, where is it going to come from, right? Unless you start like building your own platform, which it sounds like you are with you producing live shows and stuff like that, right? But if you're not doing that, then you're kind of like just waiting on bookings and gigs, and like, where I'm going to play over here, I'm going to play over here. And then sometimes there might be a gig for a couple of weeks or something, right? I don't know.
I've been really lucky. I've got more work than I can possibly do.
Yeah.
And it's not like that for everyone. One of the things is I play piano, I play keyboards, and just about every city in America is starving for a good pianist, jazz pianist, or a good keyboardist. I honestly can't tell you why, but that's the one instrument of all the classic instruments that there's just not enough of. So
Really.
if you're a keyboardist in Oklahoma City, you're gonna eat. From the time I was 18, it's not like I was playing every single night immediately, but 4 to 5 nights a week since I've been 18, whether
Yeah.
it be a bar gig or church gig. I was very involved for years. That was a big thing for me is I was playing hours and hours a week at the church, and that paid a lot of money so that I could go the other 6 days a week and play jazz for $40 and free tours, or,
Yeah.
and really learn and, be
Mhm.
with a band.
Yeah. You always hear about like what's like the 10,000 hour rule, right? To like
Right.
master something or whatever, right? Like if you had to like boil it down, how are you able to like master all these genres and keep up, right? Because being in one band, you have to practice a bunch just to like learn that one band. You're playing with multiple people, multiple genres. Like, how are you able to do that?
Yeah, I haven't really mastered anything
No,
yet.
you don't feel like you have?
No,
No.
not at all. I'm still figuring it out every day, and I
Mhm.
mean, I would say to be a master is very few and far between.
Yeah.
Especially in jazz. But no, every single genre, every single really instrument that you're playing, which doesn't matter whether it's Wurlitzer or piano or organ,
Mhm.
you've got to kind of reset. I think piano and keyboard specifically, it's pretty hard because not only do you have to play single note lines and solo,
Yeah.
you have to play chords, you have to learn how to comp, you have to play left-hand chords. That's a completely different system while your right hand is playing. So,
Yeah.
mastering is something that I'm still working on every day and is up and down in different phases, I
Yeah.
think, for me.
How do you practice? Like, if you're about to do like a specific like show or a specific band, how many nights of the week are you practicing, preparing for that gig?
Yeah, so, I mean, this is perfect. Last night we did the Tony Williams tribute.
Mhm.
The other guys in this band have done the show 3 times before.
Mhm.
I was coming in blind, with 1 rehearsal, and so I had 12 tunes to learn, and I'd probably played 4 of them before.
Wow.
And so it took, I would say, 6 hours, 7 hours of really practicing over the course of 2 or 3 days,
Mhm.
probably starting a week before the gig
Yeah.
to really do that gig right, and I felt great about it last night. I don't always get that time. It just depends on what I have going on, with 3 kids now, it's insane.
Yeah, I bet.
So practicing, it's so important to me. But right now it can't be the most important thing. I think my students ask me questions and, hey, how much should I be? You should be practicing every single second that you can.
Yeah.
So if I get a single second to practice, that's what I'm going to do.
But that's hard. Like you play the keyboard, right? It's not like you just
Yes.
carry a keyboard around. How do you
Yes.
practice? Like if you're out and about, like how do you even
That's not
practice?
out and about. There's absolutely no
way?
practicing.
Okay. I
I'm
don't know if maybe like an iPad or something.
no way. There's
No
no,
way?
no.
Okay.
For me, it's got to be a pretty intentional thing
Yeah.
for practicing. It's not, it doesn't work for me to practice 15 minutes at a time here, 15 minutes at a time here, answer emails.
Okay.
If I'm going to practice for something, I need to like just do that for however X amount of time that I have.
Yeah. And I'm assuming you prefer weighted keys, right?
Yeah. Most of the
That's
time,
going to be
yes.
like a beefy like keyboard,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
There's people, some of the greatest like play by ear versus learning how to like read notes, right? So you grew up, I'm assuming, reading notes. Is that the way you started or what?
Yeah, I did the Suzuki method that my piano
What's
teacher
the-
was. So it's a specific method that was originally developed for strings.
Mhm.
That was later, there was a method that was developed for piano.
Okay.
It's kind of a unique method because the classical people, it's a classical piano method. The classical people don't really love it or endorse it because it involves ear training pretty heavily. So my parents got me with an awesome teacher that lived in Yukon, Oklahoma, and she did the Suzuki method. And so it very much so incorporates aural training and ear training along with sight reading of music at the same time, so that
Okay.
you're knowing, okay, here's what this looks like, but really here's what this sounds like. And it's very unique. You have to be certified in order to teach that method.
Yeah.
Anybody can just start teaching it and advertise that they're teaching it.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I started to learn to read. I think the older I get, the better I feel about my reading, but that's like that's a lifelong pursuit of getting better at reading music.
Yeah. Do you think it's a requirement? Because to me, like, I don't know, if you're going to be, let's say, a pop star or rock star, hip hop star, you never see those guys like sheet music up there, right? But
Right.
I don't know, maybe you do if you're going to play with different bands or you're going to play in a studio or something. I don't know. Is it a requirement to learn how to read music or what?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
If you're going to be a jazz musician, I think yes. I don't see a way that you could be a professional jazz musician and not read music.
Yeah.
But no, I have students that have come into my office for production specifically. And they tell me what they want to do and what they want their life to potentially look like.
There's a clear path where if you decide one way or the other, that kind of dictates like what type of musician you're going to end up being. No,
I think that even if you're a pop producer and you can read music and there's benefits to that, and you can not read music and you'll be fine. It just depends on kind of what you want to do. It's hard for a pianist to necessarily not read music. You're going to be, focused in on one specific thing, which is basically playing keyboards for bands. But overall, I think, anybody that is doing music, it's not a.
Yeah.
There's some of my closest friends that I play with all the time don't read.
Okay. I always wonder about that because I've tried to do the whole reading music thing. Hasn't worked out yet. So we'll see. But I don't know. To me, that's pretty challenging, especially if you're doing, like you said, if you're doing keyboard and you're doing like bass and stuff over chords over here on the left, and you have to play the melody on the right. Super challenging.
Right. So, yeah, I have a close friend, Byron Chops Collins. He plays in that 90s country band that I was talking about.
Yeah.
The first time that I hired him for that band, he was setting up and we kind of did a sound check, and I noticed that he didn't have any charts. He didn't
like, oh crap.
He didn't have a metronome. He didn't have ears. And, I had to make 30 charts for that. I didn't grow up listening to that music. He didn't grow up listening to that music. And so I was kind of tripping about it a little bit. I was like, you learned all these tunes? You sure? He's like, yeah, man, I got it. And sure enough, he nailed all 30 tunes way better than I did with my stupid iPad charts.
Yeah. Just by ear.
Just by ear. And that's all that he does. And his ear is so good and so much better because that's all that he does, So there's a lot to be said about somebody that doesn't read you. I don't think at all.
Yeah. That's cool. You always hear about like being a rock star, right? Everybody's like, oh, it's super cool. Like I want to be in a band or whatever, right? But I'm sure there's a lot of sacrifices. A lot of times you're probably like, there's a struggle, there's a grind that happens, a lot of preparation behind the scenes.
One of the biggest things is having 3 kids and not being home from 5 o'clock to bedtime really every night. It just depends on the week, but on the average week, I'm gone 5-6 nights a week. And so I have, I get to be there during the day. I get to pick them up from school. I get to take them to school. And when they're not at school, I'm there. So there's a lot of things that I get to do that, a normal dad might not get to do. That works a 9 to 5.
You're probably like sacrificing some sleep to be able to do that, right?
Absolutely. I work while the 4 of them sleep.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of different things. I think money, I could probably, I think I could confidently get a job or go down any career path that I want to and be successful at it because I'm going to work hard at it. But I chose music, which, never is a cash cow ever.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the biggest sacrifices, time, and money,
Yeah. Luckily you had parents that were already kind of in the business, so they kind of understood it, right? Because I think if maybe you didn't have parents that were musicians, they would probably like deter you from going into that. They'd probably like, hey, take a more traditional route. Like, yeah, you can do this music thing, let that be a plan B, but then do this other thing to pay the bills, right?
Right. I mean, they were very supportive, but I mean, I had lots and lots of influences when I was a kid that they told me, you're going to be poor. It's extremely hard. You're not going to be shit till you're 40 years old. You got to keep working your whole life. That was a big part of it is.
So are they the ones that pushed you the hardest, or was there like specific people that pushed you the hardest as far as influences go?
There's that list goes on and on and on. There were people that when I was a lot younger, that were huge influences on me that my dad showed me all kinds of music from the time I could ever remember. Brian Gorel, he was one of my closest friends, Logan Gorel. That was his dad. And so when I got with him, he really understands jazz piano. So he broke it down, we kind of think the same. So he broke it down in a mathematical way that I could actually understand. That made perfect sense. It kind of made patterns and systems, which you could think of things. And Logan, I mean, even Logan, that was his son was Logan, one of my closest friends. I lived with him for years. We lived in a house in North Edmond. I call it the 1%er house.
Why is
But
that?
it was a giant house that now it would be $3,000 a month. But back in 2014, it was what, $1,800 a month, but there was 5 bedrooms. So,
Wow.
so
It was like a mansion.
there were 4 of us that lived there, and we split it up. So it really wasn't that expensive.
Yeah.
But Logan would take these mysterious, and Logan was, Garrison Brown, well, also one of my closest friends. The 3 of us lived there with a guy named Colton Dean, but Logan and Garrison and I are extremely close still to this day. And Garrison and I were heavily involved in other styles of music. We were playing in wedding bands. We were playing with artists that were doing rock and roll, doing all kinds of stuff. Logan was very focused in on jazz and very at a much higher level than we were at a much earlier age. And so we lived together. This was their freshman year of college, my sophomore year of college. And Logan would take these mysterious trips, and he would kind of leave these. He would go to Walgreens first, and he'd leave these like get well soon, get better cards. And he would write practice, you suck, and then leave it. Say I went to Colorado, and they would push us in ways that we could never understand. We would, we'd have our girlfriends over, and he would practice John Coltrane as loud as he could right in the next room just to be like, you should be practicing, man. So, I mean, there's so many people. Lee Rucker is probably one of, if not the biggest, one of my biggest influences. And he's kind of a legend around here. He also went to UConn High School.
Okay.
He was the head of jazz for a while at UCO and is now an adjunct professor.
Awesome.
And he was very, very much so a huge influence.
Yeah. Shout out to all them. That's pretty cool. There's always like people that push you and you don't really realize it probably, at the time. But then when you look back, you're like, oh, wow, like because of them, like this is where I'm at because of all this, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm very, very lucky to know all kinds of people from a young age because of the situations that I was put in.
Yeah.
My parents kind of knew people, and that eventually I put myself in because I was all into that was what I was going to do.
So how did you decide to pivot to producing live shows? Like, where did that start?
Well, it was basically I have a wife and a kid, and either I've got to figure something else out and figure out a different job, a different way to do things, or I've got to scale up what I'm doing now.
Okay.
And so that was a big thing after basically the pandemic, because I started doing these kind of bigger shows at Tower Theater, where I did the Prince tribute, the Toby Keith, Stevie Wonder, Garth Brooks tribute.
Okay. So they're like kind of like a themed event type of thing? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they were kind of bigger productions that were based on a specific artist, where we had like for the Stevie Wonder one, we had a 18-piece live band. It was too much, but yeah. So those were super cool. We started doing it around midnight. I do that almost every other week, every third week, which is an intentional jazz tribute show or a themed jazz show about a specific record or an artist. And yeah, I had to kind of be very creative and think of ways either it's like, I got to make more money now, or I've got to figure out something else. And so that's kind of what came of it.
But that's incredible that you were able to pivot while still doing the thing that you love, right? And I don't know, a lot of people say that don't do the thing that you love for a living because then you're going to hate it. But you tell me, because if you're doing, live production shows, you're probably dealing with more of the business side of things than like the creative side, right? So what is that like for you? Do you enjoy that piece as well? Or it's like, okay, I got to do it to pay the bills type of thing?
There are parts of the office work and the numbers part of it that I do enjoy. Most of it is just part of it to run the game, There's a lot of stuff that I do, and it's piling up more and more every single week that I continue on. It's like, okay, now I have to do this. Now I have to do this more and more. I had to get a big insurance policy. I had to do, that's all. This stuff is just ongoing for different things that I'm doing. So it's fun, but it makes it hard for sure.
I don't know. Sometimes musicians, like, they don't show up for a gig. You have to like figure out, okay, who's going to sub type of thing. Like, there's a lot of moving parts when you're putting on a live show, right?
Yes. I don't really deal with that part of it. I got guys that are awesome. That they're there every time, sometimes before me.
I can see that being a headache too, like where like, hey, this drummer didn't show up, or maybe this equipment broke down, and then you're like responsible at the end of the day for the show to go on, type of thing.
Maybe once a year.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, most of the people that I'm hiring, I've known and I hire for years and years. And they're great people, and if something's going on in their lives, hopefully I already know about that, and if I've got insight into what's going on.
So it's just about like surrounding yourself with like the correct team where you're like, okay, these guys are solid.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about it.
I mean, that's the only reason why that I've been successful in any way, shape, or form so far is because I've always hired people that are a lot older than me, that really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I've paid them right before I pay myself. And that's what's kind of put me at a level where I'm playing, and I'm not arrived anywhere, but I've always played with people that are older, that are better, that have kind of taught me the ropes and what I'm doing,
Did you get to meet somebody cool, or maybe like, get to do an event that was rewarding type of thing? You tell me what's been the most memorable thing.
The most memorable is probably, we've done it twice now, was the Prince tribute at Tower Theater.
Okay.
That was the first show that I've ever done that was my own live production. That was around midnight before any of that, and it sold out Tower Theater. So, Snarky Puppy. So I hired Mark Letary. He's the guitarist for Snarky Puppy. And Wes Stevenson, he's a bass player. Those are DFW
Didn't
guys.
Jose, like, wasn't he part of the
He was a
Prince
part,
thing?
yes.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And
I
shout out to
him.
Jose, actually. Jose, he was a part of the second one.
Okay.
Jose was not originally hired on the second one, and I called him on Wednesday evening, and the show was on Friday. And I said, hey, can you do this song, this song, and this song? He was like, yeah, I can do it. Because we were going to cut the songs and distribute a couple of them to the other artists. But I was like, no, Jose can do it.
Yeah.
And he came in and killed it. Yeah. So yeah, those two shows have been, it was the same crew, both shows. We had those guys back from Dallas. And I'm such a huge super fan of Prince, and my dad is even more of a huge super fan of Prince. That's probably one of the most rewarding things I've done.
Cool. I definitely want to dive into your playlist, because I can only imagine like the type of stuff that's on your playlist. So if I were to pull up your playlist right now, what am I going to find on there?
Well, what kind of playlists? You mean just
like
music?
Stuff that you enjoy listening in the car, right? When
Literally before I
not
got
prepping
here?
for a gig, like just like whatever.
Okay. A lot of it is jazz. A lot of it's neo soul. On my way here, I like to watch live YouTube videos of things that are going on, whether it be in LA or in Brooklyn. This happened to be at the Blue Note in New York. And I sent it to about probably 10 people before I got here because it was so good.
Cool.
But it's Marcus King on guitar. I don't know if you know that artist.
Yeah.
And he had Chris Dave on drums and Mono Neon on bass. So they're all three of them in their own right are pretty big names in the music world.
Cool.
But the three of them getting together is pretty unique. So I listen to a lot of random stuff like that. Lately with jazz, I've been into the more New York jazz artists. Listen to a lot of country, actually. Zach Top. I'm a huge Zach Top fan.
He's blowing up.
Oh, I love him. Next Friday, I'll be at Canes in Tulsa to see him.
No way.
Yes.
Okay.
His tour.
I kind of like him out of the newer guys. Is like he's probably like one of the guys I like the most.
Yeah, he's my favorite. My 4-year-old can sing his songs. Yes, he's awesome. I like Jonathan Blake a lot. He's a New York drummer. Been listening to. I mean, for me, my go-to as far as jazz is a lot of the older stuff. The Miles Davis Quintet. Lately it's been Lee Morgan, and a lot of the older Lee Morgan stuff.
Yeah.
So it just depends on the day. I'm a huge super fan of D'Angelo, Erykah Badu.
Nice.
The whole 90s, Soulquarian, all of that stuff.
That's where like the funk, R&B type of stuff comes into play.
Absolutely. It goes all the way to Tower of Power. It just depends. I mean, there was a full year, my junior year of high school, where that was the only CD in my car was Tower of Power live, maybe a couple times Brown Sugar, D'Angelo.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff is very ingrained into what I do. And that's why I don't play jazz like a New York jazz pianist. It's because I have too much of this other Southern influences involved in my playing that kind of came from my childhood.
How did you avoid growing up in Oklahoma and not listening to country for so long, especially being in Yukon?
I mean, growing up, my parents didn't really listen to it. We listened to Hank Williams Jr. and there Willie Nelson, a couple of the classics, but none of that modern country.
Especially like growing up, the stuff that was on the radio and stuff like that, you managed to like dodge all that.
No, I've got close friends that I know all the stuff from the radio growing up still, but not the country stuff. So all the other stuff that's not country, I had to learn a lot. There's still songs that I don't know that people are like, you don't know that song? Don't you play country? I'm like, 90s
Aren't you from
country.
Oklahoma?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. So tell me about this jazz thing. It's like every Wednesday you're there no matter what type of thing, right? How did you get involved with that? Like that's a commitment for sure.
Yeah, it's been almost 4 years every single Wednesday at the 51st Street Speakeasy. For years, I've been cool with Greg and Mike. They're the owners of that spot.
Okay.
So as soon as COVID was over, Greg reached out and we had this idea and bounced off conversations of let's have a jazz night. But we started it in March of 21? Yes, March of 2021. And it's for my career, it's probably my favorite thing that I've done and my favorite thing that I do every single week.
Awesome.
There's a featured artist, at the first hour and 10 minutes, and then it's an open jazz jam session for the community. So there's, a couple dozen teachers, professionals, students that are there to sit in and play and really work on their craft and call some new tunes they're working on. And, there's guys that work at Paycom that they were really killing musicians in high school and college, that they went a different direction with their career, but this is their outlet to go and play music.
Yeah.
There are, I would say at least 100, 120 people that are in and out the building, there to come listen to jazz, there to hang out. There's a huge support from the community. That's an awesome event that we've got every Wednesday.
Was it difficult to scale that? Because when I hear Wednesday, to me, especially being in Oklahoma, it's not like we're New York or something, right? Like, was it difficult to scale that and have people show up consistently or what?
So it was a little dry at first, but I think once people got wind of a night in general, because we were one of the first things that was an ongoing residency.
Yeah.
When live music was back from COVID. So once people got wind of it, it picked up steam quick. And, there's dead seasons in the summer when everyone's out of town. But overall, it's very, very, very well attended every week. We're very lucky.
And I imagine if you're a jazz fan, there's probably not a lot of outlets where you can go probably too, right? So if you're like, hey, these guys are there every Wednesday, if you're a big jazz person, you're going to go check it out.
Right. And actually, the cool thing about the Speakeasy is there are now 6 or 7 jazz nights in Oklahoma City.
No way.
And a lot of the support and the availability of club owners to say, hey, yeah, let's do a jazz night comes from what we've done at the 51st Street Speakeasy, what Greg and Mike have let us do, and kind of what the other people in the band and the community has done to show up every week, and the players have come for the jam session. Because we have a hired band for the first hour and a half. After that, we're relying on the community to come and play for the next 2.5, 3 hours. And, they've never failed us. It's awesome.
Yeah. What about the night of LOVE? What is that about?
Yeah.
That's coming up, right?
That's coming up soon. Yeah. So, Round Midnight is an awesome venue out in Edmond. And I would say it's more of a jazz venue. They have, an actual Steinway upright piano.
Okay.
And it's more of a listening room environment. With the Speakeasy, we want people to be having fun. It's kind of intentional at the front of the room, and at the back of the room, it's a bar. Around midnight, it's an intentional listening room. It's a ticketed event that I do. And we've done, I think, 26 of them now over the course of the last 2 years. And so it's every third Sunday in seasons. And yeah, this next one we're doing is a night of LOVE. It's February 16th after Valentine's Day.
Nice, perfect.
We'll only be playing tunes from the Great American Songbook from the Jazz Library that have love in the name. So LOVE, what is this thing called love? I love you, love for sale. It'll be a cool event.
One of the things I wanted to ask you personally is like, what advice would you give musicians that are kind of tired of trying to sell themselves, right? Because with social media and everything, like that's part of the game, right? Like you have to produce content, you have to promote yourself. It's almost like consistently you're having to be out there in order to stay busy and like if you stop like promoting, it's like they almost like forget about you type of thing. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a hard game because I'm tired of promoting right now.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what to tell you on that as far as advice.
So the burnout is real on that. Huh?
It's not burned out. It's just hard. I think maybe I should scale back the amount of ticketed shows I'm doing. But yeah, I think everything's hard right now. Getting people to shows is hard. I think everybody is strapped financially more than they were, definitely more than they were in 2021, 22, 23. I mean, I feel like it's just kind of compounded as far as the amount of people who have the money necessarily to spend to buy tickets on shows.
Yeah.
It just depends. I think the grind of reaching out in social media, it's extremely important in a lot of different ways. I've never necessarily stopped it, but it is a lot. And it's a lot to figure out and a lot to learn. I'm still learning every day.
Do you enjoy it, or is it just like it comes with the territory? I have to do it, type of thing, or what?
It's hard to not like it because in my mind, it's like I'm on a mission to sell as many tickets as possible.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of it that I do like, and a lot of figuring out the little things and listening to YouTube videos and listening to different people talk about, here's exactly what you should do. Here's the time of the day that you should post. Here's when you're doing ads, you should definitely do it in this area of town. You should not include an ad in this area of town. So it just depends kind of exactly what it is.
You were telling me that one of your videos went viral, right? Like several millions of views.
Yeah.
Tell me about that video.
Yeah, I had 2 videos. It's with this Mario Kart band that we have. So it's not my band. It's kind of cool because it's a really awesome, really professional project that I'm a part of that I'm not in charge of. I just get to be the side man.
That's cool.
Yes. And so we basically do a Mario Kart tournament with a live band. And have all the tracks learned for Mario Kart 8. I say all of them. We have 65, 70 tracks learned for Mario Kart 8.
Jeez, there's that many in the game?
There's more than that.
Wow.
They call it, what do they call it? I'm not a video game. Oh, DLC, downloadable content.
Okay.
So that's what they call it. I think there's over 100 for sure.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's a live Mario Kart tournament with a band, and so I posted 2 different reels. One of them got 1 million, and one of them is almost at 4 million.
Crazy.
So
So paint the picture for the viewers. It's like they're playing Mario Kart, but at the same time, there's a band that's playing the soundtrack to what's going on in the
exactly
game type of thing,
everything from the loading menu to the music that you're playing whenever you're picking your character.
Yeah.
To the dun 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 dun, to the stoplight dun dun. Our saxophone player plays
Like
that.
all the effects. And
all the
stuff like
effects. We
that.
speed up for the 3rd lap.
Wow.
It's very, very excellent. It's a cool project.
And if I remember correctly, you guys like are taking this show on the road type of thing, right? Like you went to
Yes.
play, like
Sort of. It's not going to go on the road. I think it would have to be a specific situation. But we were hired. I think I'm allowed to talk about that. We're hired by Adobe in San Jose. So they hired us, and we did an awesome.
What was that
performance.
like? Like they just like found you because of the viral video?
That's it.
And,
Or because of the viral video.
wow.
The guys in charge of the band, they did an interview with The Guardian or somebody. Was that the UK one? The Guardian. I think it was The Guardian.
I think so.
Yeah. And so that was a huge article that came out. And then there was a video that got 16 million views that one of the breweries in the city, who is it? Stone Cloud. Those are the guys that sponsor that band.
Yeah.
And so they posted a video that got, I think, 60 plus views, 1 million likes. So it went crazy. And so their inbox started going crazy. And one of the first people to reach out was Adobe. And so they're like, hey, we need you in San Jose in 2 weeks. Can you make it? Like, I guess.
Yeah.
We have enough money.
That's awesome, because I say you could take that show on the road, because there's a lot of video games like that. They're real nostalgic, and
Yes.
like the music, like you said, the load screens, like the special effects. Like you could probably do one for like Mario Brothers or whatever. Like, you
Right.
could do all kinds of stuff. Zelda, right? Like,
Well, dude, I mean, the amount of time and effort and energy it took for me to learn that show, I wouldn't want to do it for another show
Yeah.
again. I mean, if I really needed to, but it's a reading gig, so every single piece of music is in front of your face, and it's not easy, and every single, patch change on the keyboard is different. I'm playing
True.
marimba, then I'm playing flute, then I'm playing piano, then it's Rhodes, and I have 2 keyboards that are all switching patches.
And you wouldn't think that it would be that challenging because it's a video game and you're like, how complex can it be type of thing. But just hearing you like all the instruments and all the changes in real time, it sounds like it's pretty complex.
It's one, if not the hardest, one of the hardest gigs that I've ever had to consistently do. And my focus has to be like Tiger Woods' focus. Like I'll typically have a glass of whiskey or 2 on a gig. I don't on those. I have to focus. I have to read music. I have to do patch changes.
And then you're having to pay attention to what's going on in the game, right? Because you have to like respond to whatever's happening and change it up type of thing.
Yes, that's not my job, thank God.
Okay.
I have way too much. I have a lot going on. There's like, more than most of the people in the band. So the drummer is in charge of that.
Yeah.
Who is really cued by the screen and the host, depending on what the show is. So that's their job, and then their job is to cue me based on music. So it's not a visual cue for me. I just have to.
Yeah.
But for them, it's a visual cue. They have to play and read, and it's, but they don't have to switch patches. They don't have to change what they're doing. So.
What are your long-term goals, right? Like you're doing all these projects, you're putting on live shows. What's on the goal list, right? Like where do you want to be, 5-10 years from now?
That's an interesting question. I think one of the biggest things that I want to do is move out of Oklahoma. That's definitely a 5-year goal, more than a 10-year. It gets interesting whenever you have a wife and 3 kids. I think I want my career to look very, very similar to the way that it is now, just at a larger scale.
Okay.
So there's several guys that are out there that I kind of model my career after and that look up to, as mentors. One of them is Adam Blackstone. And that guy, if you don't know who he is, if you've ever watched the Grammys, if you've ever watched the Super Bowl, if you've ever watched the Oscars, if you've ever watched any kind of award show or any kind of thing that's on national television, he's the musical director. He hires the band. He's the musical director for Justin Timberlake.
Okay.
For Alicia Keys, for the list goes on and on and on. And so, I'd love to work with bigger artists at some point, and not even bigger artists, but bigger productions, whatever that may be. A lot of the stuff that I do, it makes it seem like I'm an artist, but really, I'm kind of born to be a sideman. I want to play with other artists. I want to play behind other people.
Yeah.
I don't want necessarily my name to be on the bill, even though it is. No, and that comes with needing it too, so that I can sell tickets, so that I can be in control of this and make money.
Yeah.
But no, in an ideal situation, I'm hired and paid very well as a sideman, so that I don't have to do any of that other stuff.
True.
Whether that be with, any kind of jazz great, or, one of the New York jazz cats, or whether that be with, Garth Brooks, or doesn't matter kind of what it is, but, just doing the exact same things. And Larry Goldings is one of those guys that, and I've got to have lunch with him and, study him and study exactly what he's done. And he plays keyboards with John Mayer, with James Taylor, but then he also has a jazz trio that tours all over Europe. He does everything. Plays with Scary Pockets and does that whole thing. So I want to do the same thing I'm doing now, just at a bigger scale.
Yeah. So do you find it limiting to be in like OKC? I mean, it's central. You could travel pretty much everywhere, right? But do you think you kind of have to be in it? Like, let's say like Nashville or Austin, or I don't know, what's the ideal city for you?
For what I'm doing, and I haven't been ready to move to a different city. I'm still practicing. I still am figuring out what I want to sound like. Still figuring out my voice in music. I haven't been necessarily ready, even though I've wanted to for years. I could have, and it would have been great, and it probably would have pushed me to different things. But I've enjoyed not necessarily having to like struggle and live with 4 dudes in a studio apartment in order to kind of grow in other ways and develop other skills here in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
I don't think that my wife and I will end up here in Oklahoma or our family. Not to say that you couldn't make it here, and there's people that have made it that are here and they call this home base, and that's awesome. I just don't think that this is kind of the overall place for us.
Yeah. You haven't decided where on the map ideal places.
At some point, hopefully, I think we'll move to Florida for a couple of years, but we don't want to end up there.
Got it.
You know, she has a lot of family in Florida, and I'd like to get, another degree. Or I say another degree. I don't even have my first degree. I'd like to finish my first degree and get another degree from Miami at some point.
Okay.
And study with John DeVersa and Kelly Carroll and those guys. But yeah, I think out of Oklahoma is a big goal. Kind of just keeping the momentum of what I've got going up.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. There's been slumps and there's been times where it's like, oh, no one's buying tickets right now in Oklahoma. Why is this? Okay, it's this. We need to pivot. We need to do more shows at this time of the year, less shows at this time of the year. It's just kind of figuring out what to do. And I think there's no better and cheaper and more enjoyable place to do that than Oklahoma City.
As far as recordings go, is that like something that you enjoy doing or something that you want to do in the future, more of that type of thing, like putting stuff out there, like your own project type of thing?
No, not right now. Yes, I 100% see that being a thing when I am 40 years old or and more. But there's still a lot of things that I'm not comfortable with in my playing at a specific level that I need to get
You keep
better.
saying that, but like you're doing all these cool projects and playing all these different genres. Like, wow, to me, like you're already there. If you ask me. You know?
Well, it's hard. I mean, even there's several guys in Oklahoma that can play circles around me and jazz piano. It's a matter of kind of who you surround yourself with, because I get hired more because I play more of these shows. But no, I mean there are brilliant people everywhere.
So you don't have anything like people can check out on Spotify or something like that? Or?
There are a couple things, and as a sideman, I have almost 200 songs that I've played on.
Okay.
I have an entire playlist of stuff that I'm playing on as a sideman.
Nice.
And that's one of my biggest passions. That's number 2 to playing live, but is playing in the studio. That's something that I do very well because of my background in the church and a click being pounded in your ear. And so I play quite a bit in the studio, which goes through seasons.
Yeah.
But that's I love playing in the studio. I don't want to really record my own stuff yet.
It's funny you say that because recently I saw the Yacht Rock documentary. I don't know if you checked that out.
I've heard it, yeah.
But it's pretty incredible just to like see all the history and how all that rolled out. But one of the things that stood out about that documentary is the guys from Toto, that band, like, what is it called? Like, what is that song? The like Take Me Back to Africa or whatever.
Yeah.
Is it called Africa?
Africa.
Okay. Well, those guys.
Hold the Line. Oh yeah, I love Toto.
Yeah. So you would think like they're the real poppy type of thing, but those guys were like big studio guys.
Absolutely.
So like listening like all the greats that they're like, hey, we need this type of sound or like somebody that's gonna kill it, nail it, and like the Toto guys were like the go-to guys in the studio.
Absolutely.
I never knew that.
Yeah. And it's funny because the studio guys and a lot of the situations I've been in that are the best studio guys are the guys that do all the genres. And it's because they can play very complicated stuff and they can express themselves and improvise, but they know what it means and they know their role and how they should fit in a situation where they need to play the same 3 damn chords over and over and over again. And there's some people that just not get that. They can't play on a country track that do a lot of bebop and jazz stuff.
Yeah.
It's knowing kind of where you fit in a specific song and a specific genre.
I definitely recommend that doc. I don't know if you're a fan of Yacht Rock
seen a
or
couple
not.
clips of it, but I actually, my dad's actually talked to me about that several times.
Yeah.
Told me that I need to watch it.
Yeah, it's funny because the whole Yacht Rock like movement is kind of like almost like a meme type of thing now, right? It's like gotten more popular, right? Like if you're an artist like that, I don't know how you would feel if like you're part of the Yacht Rock. Like, would you be proud of that, or would you be like, oh no, like I'm part of this meme type of thing?
I don't even know. I don't even know exactly what. I mean, I've got a bunch of friends that have a Yacht Rock band, but I don't even know what Yacht Rock encompasses completely.
Yeah, it's hard to describe too. It's like the type of music that you would listen to if you're on a yacht type of thing,
That-
right? Like
my
that's
mind
how
im-
the best description that I can
It
give,
immediately
right?
goes to like Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer.
When you listen to it, it's more about the vibe of like, if I had a yacht, it's like, what would I be listening to? I don't know. It's weird.
Makes sense. There's no period. It's-
No.
yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. So I don't know. Check it out if you get some time. To me, I was just impressed with the Toto guys because I didn't know much about them besides like those, few singles. And then if you go to that documentary, they've worked with like some of the greatest, and the go-to guys were the Toto guys.
Yeah. So cool story. He's awesome. I've met him several times. But Dominique, he's from Oklahoma City, grew up in Norman, went to Norman North. He's the keyboard player for Toto right now.
No way.
And he's been on the road with them for the last 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
And, I didn't really grow up knowing Dominique or anything, but
Yeah.
he is one of the best and is really, really involved in the LA music scene and is the keyboard player for Toto right now.
Cool. Well, they're rolling heavy, man. If you go check out, like you said, especially if you look at like in the studio, like all these credits, I bet their credits are crazy.
Yeah.
Cool. So I want to thank you for your time. I
Dude.
enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely.
But before we sign off, I want to give you the stage once again. Plug in your social media, plug in your shows, everything you want. The stage is yours.
Yeah, man. I really appreciate you having me. This is awesome. It's a really awesome podcast you have going on here.
Thank you.
You can follow me on Instagram at Kendrick McKinney, Facebook Kendrick McKinney Music, TikTok is at Kendrick McKinney. All of the different social medias are really just my name. YouTube, there's no C in my name, so it's just
Yeah.
Kendrik.
Which is great for social media because you can be unique and you'll probably pop up,
right,
Yeah.
right. If they spell my name right, if they don't put the C,
Yeah.
right. So yeah, I've got a lot of stuff. Every Wednesday, come out to the 51st Street Speakeasy at Oklahoma City, and I've got a night of LOVE. That's February 16th. Sunday, February 16th here in Oklahoma City. That's going to be an awesome Valentine's show. The
Where's
next
that at?
Round Midnight in
Okay.
Edmond. That's going to be an awesome one. And yeah, I've got some later in the year. I've got some other cool jazz things, and probably later in the fall, some bigger shows again,
Cool.
kind of like the Tower Theater shows that we've done that are coming out
Awesome.
to be announced.
Dude, you're killing it. So
Man.
congrats on everything. I don't
Thank
know
you
how
so
to do it. I
much,
don't know when
man.
you sleep, but you're like, I don't sleep.
Not really, not really.
Yeah. Cool.
But man, yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on
Yeah,
here.
you bet. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the super talented Kendrick McKinney on the Maverick Podcast. In dreams, we trust.